Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd here today with Professor O, as we often are on Thursdays, talking about movies. And this particular movie is This Island Earth. Now, This Island Earth, of course, we have to bring in our Gilligan's Island stuff. Island, because they consider Earth to be just kind of a desert island in the galactic sphere. So that shows the insignificance of the planet Earth. And then, of course, we also have Russell Johnson again, once again playing a supporting role who dies early in the picture, kind of like he did in It Came from Outer Space. He did this also in another movie, uh, Attack of the Crab Monsters, I think, where he also died early in the picture. So he was good at dying, I suppose. But we'll talk a little more about him in a moment. But how are you doing today?
Doing well. Oh,
Yeah.
well, Attack of the Crab Monsters. Now I know I would probably give that 2.5 Gilligans, but out of five. But sometimes you rate them on four. But that was that's a movie that's close to my heart. I hadn't thought of that until you said that. But yes,
Yeah.
doing well. Doing well. It's hot up here. Of course, it's
Yeah.
summertime, and as it should be. Man, we had a little microburst of wind that came through,
We did too.
and
Yeah.
but yeah, nothing. I don't think that ever happened on Gilligan's Island. Did they ever have rough weather on
They did.
Gilligan's?
They did in the
They did.
early black and white season. They had uh, uh, they were just barely holding their grass huts together as a storm or hurricane came through, and it was in the early days of it. They were almost a serious show. They had jokes, and in fact, that show, I understand, was originally intended to be a drama.
I'll be
The
darned.
idea that Sherwood Schwartz had was to put together people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. The Skipper and Gilligan were had been in the war, and they're just running a little charter service. The Howells, of course, being very rich. You have the professor who was an educator, and in the pilot they had two secretaries who really couldn't afford the charter. And so the whole idea was that you have all of these people from different backgrounds, and how do they get along surviving on a desert island? And it was an interesting idea. Kind of, I mean, Lost picked it up and ran with it decades later, but that was the original concept for Gilligan's Island until what happened was that Newton Minow told what schlock there was on TV, and he said, "If you want schlock, I'll give it to you," and made it a comedy.
And turned it into wonderful schlock.
And yeah, it's something that's been
I
constantly
say wonderful.
rerun up till
Yeah,
today. Yeah,
until the and that's funny. I know we will get to this movie, but
yeah. Don't worry about the movie. Yeah,
well, when I barely remember the black and white episodes. I
yeah.
watched it a lot after school
They
and
didn't
stuff like that,
rerun them
but I
as
can
much. That's true.
right. Oh yeah, in reruns, and right, that's they didn't rerun them as much. Whereas the black and white Lost in Space episodes, I think every time they would recycle that into, which would take about 4 months if you're
Yeah,
watching
they only
any
had
show.
like what, 3 seasons of Lost in
3
Space.
seasons, same thing for Star Trek. So
Yeah,
when you'd be watching that after school,
yeah.
you come home at 3:30, and
You just have to see
then
it.
it would take about 4 months to recycle each one of those shows. But the Lost in Space episodes, were much the black and white. They were set. It was a drama at first. It was much more grim
Yes,
and gothic. And it's interesting to hear about Lost in. I mean,
Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island being that way. And just in my when you say that, and I can imagine the weather. I've seen that episode. Yeah, it was much more of a story of survival, and that's fascinating about the different backgrounds of the characters and how they would get along. That's and then Newt Minow decided to make some
Yeah,
changes.
yeah. He decided to criticize Hollywood. Not a very good idea. An old broadcast friend of mine used to say, "He who holds the microphone always wins." So
Right.
there you have it. But interesting thing about Russell Johnson, we have seen him now in a similar role, playing kind of the best friend in this picture, and also in Came from Outer Space, and he's done other science fiction movies. He mostly appeared in television. He started in like 1950 and was doing guest shots on every show you could imagine in the 50s and in the 70s. Most of the 60s he was doing Gilligan's Island, but in the 50s he was on Superman. He was on let's see, if you would know, Firesign Theater. He was on City
Oh, right.
Detective, I mean, and things like that. But he also did some movies that were not necessarily science fiction. Of course, he was in It Came from Outer Space. He was in this one. He was in the Attack of the Crab Monsters. Uh,
The Space
he
Children
was
popped up.
also in Demetrius and the Gladiators. He played one of the gladiators. He
Ah,
was in a let's see what else. I had them all lined up here. Um, he was in Ma and Pa Kettle at Waikiki. Remember the Ma
I
and Pa
heard a
Kettle
little
films
I
like
heard a
that?
little fact about that,
Yeah,
and apparently that film ran with This Island Earth as a double feature in
that's
some theaters.
interesting. That's interesting.
Can you imagine? Yeah, that's a real, dichotomy there.
Yeah. Let's see. He's also Courage of Black Beauty. Um, let's see. Bad Man's Country. He played Sundance. Let's see what else. Have to
I
get
noticed
to.
he was in The
Uh,
Space Children. That's a Jack Arnold film
he was in
from
Ripcord. You remember? You wouldn't remember Ripcord. That was 1961. It was about skydivers.
Oh, I've heard
And
the name.
yeah, he was in Route 66, Tales of Wells Fargo, The Real McCoys, Ben Casey, Wagon Train, um, Hawaiian Eye, Laramie, Rawhide, 77 Sunset Strip. Um, he was in the movies of Invitation to a Gunfighter. He was in The Greatest Story Ever Told. He was a scribe.
Wow.
He was in The Invaders, one of your favorites.
Oh, yes.
And let's see, in Lassie,
He
um,
was in a MacGyver episode,
That
apparently.
Girl, the FBI,
Ah,
Marcus Welby, Ironside, Gunsmoke. He was in The Horror at 37,000 Feet, which is a TV movie.
oh, God, that's a scary
Um,
movie.
let's see.
Maybe
And
not a great film, but I remember, yeah, a
yeah, but
ghost
anyway,
story
all
in
the
the
way through the 70s, I think the last thing he did was like in 1982. Excuse me, later than that. He was in an episode of Roseanne.
Ah, wow. Oh, that's cool.
His last appearance was in a show called Migo, where he plays a professor in 1997,
He really had the look. He had that,
and he was
yeah,
in the Hellbender video game
that that's
as voice of
amazing.
General Cho. So he worked. He died in like 2007, I believe, but had 172 credits to him. So
Wow.
it would be hard. 2014 actually, he died in 2014. It would be hard
Wow.
to pick one of the movies during that era and that we've been reviewing and not find him at least once. So
Absolutely.
we've hit on him twice, and that's probably all we're going to do. But
Yeah. You never
that's
know.
just as well. One of the things I'd like to say about this film, though, is about the set decoration and the special effects in this. We have given Forbidden Planet a lot of credit for how a lot of the subsequent science fiction uh, TV shows and movies have been done, but I see a lot of things in this as well that I wouldn't have expected.
Oh,
They noticed
100%. Yeah.
aboard the alien spaceship, they have their chairs are all angled. They just
Yes.
kind of lean on them. The reason they said was because the costumes were too tight,
Ah,
especially on Faith Demure, who played Dr. Ruth. She said that she couldn't sit down and it was so tight.
Wow.
And
Right.
yeah, I look at some of the pictures they have here, and it really wasn't that tight. I think that she said couldn't wear underwear in it because it was so tight. So I think they were just trying to uh, arouse somebody's interest in that.
Huge
But
things up.
yeah,
Yeah.
but however it is, they use that same idea in Babylon 5. The Minbari did not sleep on a flat bed; they slept on an angle, and it was just
Ah,
like the chairs that were in there. So I find that that was
right.
kind of interesting how they use that. Of course, the tubes that they went into to get them ready for Star Drive or whatever was they used in Lost in Space as the freezing tubes,
Right.
and they used that same motif in several places there. So you can see the influence there. They didn't have anything like that in Forbidden Planet, but they took it from this. So I think this film had a lot of influence that went beyond the actual quality of the film itself.
Yeah, I mean, and the science, the special effects and the science too. The science was all over the place. You look at the idea, the use of lead to, of course, in dealing with nuclear, any type of nuclear material, you're going to need lead to protect people. And some of the nuclear material, the idea is getting into the uses of the atom. um that it felt more, of course we're looking at atomic scientists. It felt like they'd done their homework a little better than some of the space stuff. But like you said, some of the space stuff was good. Another good part about the space stuff was thinking about the different pressures on the different planets. And it completely made sense. They had
Yes,
to prepare themselves for going to Metaluna, which was like being underwater. And so
right.
that was pressure so extreme. So they had to that's what the tubes were for, prepare themselves for that. And then conversely, on the way back, they've got to prepare themselves for Earth's atmosphere. And that's why the mutant, which is a plot spoiler, but that's why it basically disintegrates, because it snuck on board the ship and did not do the pressure equalization cylinders,
Yeah.
had not been prepared. So that was some pretty good science with that.
Yeah,
Um,
it was decent. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. The only thing about the mutant was that we've read that they were kind of embarrassed. Even some of them, I think Russell Johnson was one of them that walked out during the premiere when the mutant came on screen because
oh
it was
God!
just too embarrassing. But
But
and
when
the
you
deal
think
was
about
they
it,
had this was the other monster that they had designed for. It came from outer space, and they decided not to use it, so they used it on this film.
right,
But they could not make it. It was supposed to have different legs that matched the top part, but
right.
they couldn't articulate it well. The actors couldn't move well in it, so they just put them in regular pants. And so they
Well,
have
some
your
snappy
mutant from the
khakis.
waist up, and from the waist down, you're just a guy in pants.
Yeah, snappy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much that's a
Zanzibar,
guy.
yeah,
And how useful are they as slave workers? Is up to up for decision.
yeah,
But yeah, they and the other one was about well, I love Jeff Morrow's line. They're very similar to insect life when you think about it. A little bit larger and maybe more dangerous, but nonetheless the same principle. And that line of Jeff,
yeah,
I had read. I kind of going back and forth between reading reading the criticism, and then or the critiques of the film, and then I watched the film, and that line was, yeah. Exeter's got some great lines, but that was not one of them.
yeah. But the reason they even had the alien was because they already had the costume. I think
Yeah.
that it really wasn't written into this film. They just said, "Oh, let's make a scene for it because we spent the money to build this thing and didn't use it in the last film."
Well,
And
and there's two there's there apparently nobody wants to claim responsibility for the mutant.
yeah,
The producer says, I think there's the writer director and the producer. That William Allen, I think, is producer, and
yeah,
writer director might have been Newman, and both of them blame the other one, not in a very vicious way, but
yeah,
it's like, God bless, God bless him, God bless William Allen. He just wanted to use that mutant. I couldn't say no. And the same story from the other guy. God bless Newman. He wrote this. He procured the script and wanted to stick that mutant in it. And I said, "What the heck?"
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, somebody
This
really
is only
wanted
a
the damn
Universal
thing.
picture.
Yeah.
But they made this one in color, and they had they didn't have a widescreen process. They wanted to do something like CinemaScope, but
Ah,
that CinemaScope was Paramount, I think. No, VistaVision was Paramount. What was the anyway? So one of the other studios had CinemaScope. So what they did was that they filmed the whole thing in 3x5, which the standard Academy
right.
aspect, and in doing so, they gave all of the top and bottom of the picture unimportant elements. So a lot of headroom for the actors, and insignificant stuff lower down, and so they would allow theaters to mask it to where it would fit on a widescreen. The theaters that
That's
had
right.
widescreens, those theaters that still had the Academy ratio, they just wouldn't mask it, and you'd see this with unreal headroom.
Well, Lord knows Exeter and Brack needed a little bit
Well,
more
they did.
headroom, more headroom to be
This is
specific.
something that bothered me, that they didn't really notice
I know. It's
they
well,
didn't
you never
suspect they were
know.
aliens, even though they had foreheads that were the size of the rest of their head. But
Russell Johnson did make a nice drawing of that for when
yeah,
they were when they were taking all their. I think they couldn't take pictures, but he had made drawings. One thing Bill Warren pointed out, and I, this is all our incredible Bill
yes,
Warren, the McFarland author. He um, he pointed out that it would have been there were a couple of threads that would have been interesting to follow. For one thing, he points out that Exeter says this is just one this is just one of our scientific uh, outposts that we have across the earth. They're in other words, kind of implying that maybe there's three or four more areas where they've taken scientists who were invited by creating the interocitor, and then they get
yeah.
invited to come. So there's more than that,
So there was
and
Atlanta, and there were some other places. It
yeah,
seemed
that
kind
there's
of odd that they put it in Atlanta, but
yeah,
whatever, whatever it
but
takes.
yeah, it's in Georgia,
Yeah,
but apparently there were more. And then the other thing they really didn't follow through with was Russell Johnson makes. He says we found this entire uh, mountain that's been hollowed out. I think it's kind of implied that's where the saucer is, but they really
yeah,
didn't follow up on that. And that's one thing that's an interesting film. It's like two movies in one. You get it's like a science fiction conspiracy film
yeah.
where you've got to build the interocitor, which I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, you're
I
full
really
any
like that part of it. That really is what compelled me about this, because they came up with the idea of this interocitor. It's a communication device, it's a weapon, and it doesn't need a transmitter or receiver somehow, because and this is something that they pretty much made good use of in Star Trek, where I think they even pointed it out in one of the movies. Where's the camera for this? But
right. That's a great point. Star Trek was always had the mysterious and
yes,
that camera could even dolly in Star Trek
yeah,
and
that's right.
just at the right moment. I mean,
Yeah, always knew just exactly when he was going to say something profound.
yeah, that's an amazing device. Yeah,
This
but
one you
you
could get a
totally have
picture from down the street, and it didn't seem to matter that there wasn't any transmitter there. But otherwise,
yeah.
I like the design of this, and the fact that they built it, and they were still calling capacitors condensers in those days. So they were, they had some actual electronics
Yeah.
uh,
That's a bit of science
terminology
that
that was
actually
fairly
felt
accurate in that.
yeah, felt authentic. If you, yeah, exactly. Yeah, in the size of a bead. That's exactly right. No, what they call it? They call it a condenser in the movie, or
They
they
call it a
call it a
condenser. That's just the old word for capacitor.
capacitor. Right.
And
That's
a capacitor, basically, it builds up a charge and then releases it all at once. It's how flash bulbs work. When they go
ah
and then they'll flash. It builds up a certain amount of energy and then releases it.
releases it all at once.
And that's
That,
part of any kind of electronic thing that allows uh, different voltages to happen across a circuit to make it do certain things.
Yeah, and maybe in the film it's kind of implied that Meacham is working with it to definitely he's going to use it's so connected to nuclear
Yeah, he needs something that is not going to burn out under very high loads. And that's, you in electronics you have different size capacitors. They go from tiny to the size of your fist, depending on. I mean, stereos used to have these big old soup can size capacitors in them, and not necessarily for power, but for fidelity.
interesting. That's
And
it.
communication receivers often will have those big things too. And it was there were more everything with regard to electronics usually needs resistors and capacitors in it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And in terms of, would you say in terms of when they get all the parts and they're in the, they let's say they're in, it's really interesting the way Exeter creates the curiosity. They send this part that came from a company. It's supposed to be a big capacitor, but instead it's like a bead. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, where did this come from? They look it up, and then next thing you know, they get a catalog of parts.
And that looks exactly like a catalog of parts that you would see. I mean, if you go with any of the electronic parts houses, they have catalogs that look exactly like that. In fact, I think they probably took one and just recreated a page for the beads and things like that.
that makes I can see our beloved
Yeah.
friend Ken
Yes.
just loving a
Oh yeah.
catalog.
He was yeah, he was one that ordered every catalog there was, much to the chagrin of his boss who had to bring the mail in. And
Yeah, at the radio station. Yeah,
yeah, he had a
Ken
big
could have made
piles
an
of it.
interocitor. Ken,
Yeah, he would have. I imagine he would have it given the chance.
I know he would. I wonder. I don't know if Ken would have made a beat. It's interesting. So yes, the curiosity is piqued, and Meekum builds, and his assistant Joe Wilson. Joe's pretty not skeptical. He's worried that men was
Yeah.
not meant to. This is thinking too much.
Once again, this is the nuclear paranoia. We're not smart enough to handle this level of technology.
Well, that's a good point. That's a pretty good point when you think about it.
And
People
and
at
the
Chernobyl
joke
might
the joke
agree.
about the scientist at the Manhattan Project was, once the rockets go up, who cares where they come down? That's not our department.
Well, right, right. Good point. Yes, departmentalization, very much another thing in the 50s.
Yes.
Compartmentalization.
Yes.
But so yeah, Joe Wilson's got some points. Although as viewers, we're like, no, we want to learn more. Go ahead and get that catalog, put it together. And did you think? It looks to me like, did you see any transistor material in there, or is it all vacuum tubes when they're unpacking the the parts for the interocitor? I saw mainly vacuum tubes, or
Yeah,
just
that
big
would
kind of
that
stuff.
would have been because um, a
50
transistor had only been recently invented. I don't know if it would have been anything the audience would have recognized, so they used
We're
tubes.
at the cusp of the transistor age. Maybe
Yeah,
not quite
really.
there yet. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. They just had better vacuum tubes than Metaluna. So
yeah,
but but yeah, so then they make the interocitor, and as soon as they plug it in, Exeter comes on. Our we he's presenting himself as a human with a kind of unusually high forehead and white hair, but other than that, he just basically a fellow scientist who
yeah.
wants to, who and I'm going to give you
Well,
gives
there's
him
a
a
story. There's a story
yeah.
of a guy that had business with Leonard Nimoy, and they were going to go to an office that he had wherever he was working at that time. And the guy asked on the phone, "Do you mind if I bring my son with me?"
Ah,
And he says, That's just fine. Go ahead." And he said, before we went to his office, he said, "I told my son, now don't look at his ears." Which, by
oh,
that point, he was not in any kind of costume.
that's and if Cal Meacham had invited his son along, I don't know what they would have done because there was only one seat on the plane.
That's right.
which was a unique plane that you can't even see out the windows in the
Yeah,
in
and then they
the
make those. I mean, this was the old Douglas DC-3 in the military. It was the C-47 that was used as a passenger and a cargo plane. So it was easily converted from one thing to the other. And it's possible you could just have one seat on it because sometimes they would let personnel fly on a cargo plane if there was a little room left.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, yeah, and it's interesting. It felt like when I'm listening, the sound effects sounded a little bit different. That was one thing they could have had a more futuristic plane. But it made. But then again, it flew itself. It completely
That's
flew
true.
itself.
That's true.
Landed in a pea soup fog
Yeah.
that Joe
Well, they
Wilson
used
says
their
there's
most futuristic plane at the very beginning of the film with
right,
that trainer, and
right.
it was a trainer and a escort plane, I think, of some sort, and it looked particularly futuristic for its time.
Yeah, early jet.
I believe so. Yeah, I have somewhere on here what that's
What
called,
that plane was, but
but
yeah. And when in that scene where and this is before he builds the inner Rossiter,
yeah,
before it's not Jeff Morrow, who's the actor for that was Rex Reason.
Rex Reason. Yeah,
Rex Reason, before he builds the inner Rossiter. Do you see, and there he's kind of preening before the press, and the
yeah.
press is asking him questions about we're at how we're going to use it's the early atomic age. How are you going to use atomic energy to take us to this new push button era
Yeah.
that we're fixing, that we're
We're not
preparing?
nearly there. There's one of the lines that people think we're in the push button age, but we're not nearly there. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. The plane was a Lockheed T-33 Shooting Star for people who are
Ah,
interested in
exactly.
in military planes. Interesting. This guy is a scientist and a pilot, and it comes in handy later on. I mean, thank goodness he was a pilot, or else he would have been able to get this light plane onto the off of the flying saucer and to safety at the end of the film. By the way, this flying saucer was modeled after a description of a UFO that a pilot had seen.
Oh, that's exactly modeled after the description of the like 1947 UFO.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, which is another thing
Once
because
again, we give kudos for their model and set designs. They did really a very good job with that,
oh, did a
and in fact,
fantastic job.
they won an award. I forget from where, but they won an award for sound mixing. Wasn't a Academy Award. It was either a Saturn Award if that was in effect then, or something
Right, so
similar.
they had those. Yeah, but the sound was fantastic.
Yeah,
Um, the the and yeah, the shots of the flying, and what you said just completely because it resonates, because it not just sound, but the UFO, the flying saucer look, because we see that in The Day the Earth Stood Still and Forbidden Planet. They
yeah,
kind of that really had that. Of course, was it Earth versus the Flying Saucers?
yeah,
It's definitely going to have that look. But yeah, that definitely set the table for. And their model was fantastic. I thought, and the model also was. They did a great job when because of course they go to Georgia. Our trio, Faith Demure. And
right.
Rex Reason. These are the actors' names, but Ruth is Faith Demure. Rex Reason is, I forget, Meekum,
Yeah,
and then Russell Johnson. Um, they escape in a car. They realize that Exeter is not who he appears to be. Some of the scientists there have been lobotomized. They're all working. The mystery is they're being brought in to work with Exeter to work on some sort of top secret plan. They don't know what the plan is, but it deals with finding more nuclear energy. So it deals with the production of nuclear energy.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be about
Uranium or something.
peace.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's supposed to be
yeah.
about
They're not quite consistent on whether they're really peaceful or not. At one
right.
point, they're just trying to defend their plan, or defeat the enemy so they can go and settle somewhere.
That's
and
what it's
and
really about. Yeah,
yeah,
because
and said, we were planning on doing some place on Earth where it wouldn't be too noticeable, but we are incredibly superior. And I'm thinking, are we supposed to worship your kind then after that, or are they going to stay in a remote part of Australia and nobody would know it? They didn't really make that clear.
remote part. I love that. Have you read Milton, Captain? Yeah, yeah. The and that's a great point. And Rex Reason, Meekum points that out. He says, exactly what you said. Are you going to be? You feel so you position yourselves as superior to us. Are we going to be working for you? I mean, they've already made mutant slaves. What are they going to do to humans?
Right.
And but one thing that kind of I did, and then Rex Reason, then they escape from the leader of on Metaluna. They escape from the leader of the planet. Exeter helps them escape because God bless him. He's a Metalunan that just is he doesn't
He's
like
a
to be
murderous
controlled.
alien with a heart of gold,
Yeah, well,
or whatever they've got.
well, that's well put. A murderous alien with a heart. Of course, he points out when they point out as they're leaving Georgia, and they basically destroy the mansion with some scientists in there, and Rex Reason or McMeekum says, "You're a mass murderer," and uh, and uh, and Exeter says, "I'm just trying to defend my kind. We're under attack." Um, and he said, "There's a line. I can't remember the line exactly, but basically." Something about corrupting of the soul, some sort of corruption of the soul.
Uh,
And Rex Reason says something, I'm big time paraphrasing. He says, "Well, that's easy for you to say." And Rex Reason, and then Exeter says, "I heard it on Earth about your."
our source was the New York Times.
Putting it back on us.
Yeah.
But yeah, a murderer with the heart of gold. And the heart of gold really does come out. He saves them from being lobotomized. He realizes the entire planet's going to explode. He's got some common sense and he wants to rescue them. He wants to take them back to Earth at the end. Quick question while you're checking. What do you think? And I think I did point this the Universal Terrors, really good history of these films. I think it's got that line in there somewhere, but it's lots of pages on this film. What do you think? Do you see a contrast between John Putnam, last week's hero, or 2 weeks ago, the hero from two
Yeah.
weeks ago, Professor B, and and John Putnam setting the mold for 50s science fiction scientists? And is Rex Reason here a different kind of scientist? What do you think?
Uh, that's a good one. I think that maybe he is a different kind of scientist. Maybe he's someone who's not really wanting to go investigate anything as much as when placed with a curiosity, he wants to figure it out.
Right, right. Driving with and you don't see John Putnam. It's like they got different personalities, and I'm trying to think. John Putnam's you see in a lot of different um, creature films, that kind of introverted, quiet scientist, and Rex Reason is more extroverted and
Yeah.
definitely a man of action. He's kind of like Iron Man a little bit in the and in this flying jets. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of
Well, you don't have anybody doubting anybody at this point.
good
There.
point. Oh, and they totally doubt John Putnam. Yeah, he's got to prove
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a it's a kind of two different. There's there's different gradations of both. Richard Carlson plays another kind of introverted scientist in The Creature from the Black Lagoon, but he's less introverted in that film than he is in It Came from uh, It Came from Outer Space. Yeah, It Came from Outer Space versus and Rich. I'm just thinking, where do you see more of those dashing scientists? There's definitely a little bit of Iron Man. Uh, the uh, the kind of scientist from Marvel. Who's going to fly jets. But I'm trying to think of more scientists like that in the 50s, and I'm not. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah,
More
just as
scientists
well.
like
I'm
yeah.
stuck on this line, this monologue that
Ah,
Exeter gives.
right.
He's talking about the war that they're having with the other group. Yes, they're concentrating all their attention on Metaluna. Those flashes of light, they're meteors, hundreds of them. Intense heat is turning Metaluna into a radioactive sun. Temperatures must be thousands of degrees by now. A lifeless planet, and yet still serving a useful purpose, I hope. Yes, a sun, warming the surface of some other world, giving light to those who may need it. Now into the converter tubes. Ruth, you take the first tube, you the next. What about you? I'll use the third tube. I think, who writes this?
I know. It goes from poetry to practical tube use, and it is kind of
There are three
poetic.
tubes there. Which one are you going to use after you put two of us in the tubes? I mean, come on. These are PhDs.
Especially after that line of, he's definitely on the edge of martyrdom, and with his son is going, but perhaps it'll alarm another world and and be a light. And then hey, three tubes, three of us, come on, figure it. Yeah, you figure it out, Jeff. You're a PhD. That's a good point.
What do you think of Mr. Mozart, Exeter? I'm afraid I don't know the gent. My mind must have been wandering.
Yeah, and he mentions your Mozart.
Your Mozart, yeah, your composer.
It's our Mozart. Yeah, that's
it belongs to the world. Oh yeah, right.
So when they're in Georgia, and Exeter again is positioned. His assistant is terrible. Yeah, Exeter's definitely working in a kind of a Mussolini-esque or Nazi-esque, government. It's very much government control. They're going to do whatever they want to achieve their ends, and they are being attacked. So you can understand in some respects how they've been pushed to this brink. But Brack wants to. He feels like you must control the scientists, and Exeter is saying no. They don't think as well when you lose your free will. It's a big thing to have a free will, to have your sense of free will. And in the scene where Exeter is talking to Brack, Neutrino the cat has Neutron the cat has just alerted Meekum, Cal Meekum, and Ruth and Russell Johnson that they're being spied on. They don't think anybody can see them, but it's their first conversation, and they're talking about, wait a minute, Ruth, you're acting like you don't even know me, and it's because they're afraid. The other two who've been on the island longer, Ruth and Russell Johnson, are afraid Exeter are afraid that Meekum has his mind controlled and that he'll spy on him. He'll be a traitor. And no, they're all free, and they're all suspicious. So they try and talk, but Exeter with his interocitor and the invisible transmitter can see them. And but Neutron alerts when they turn on that invisible transmitter. Neutron feels the neutrino rays and reacts, and then they realize they're being spied on, and Exeter looks over to Brack, and Brack is like wanting to use the mind control device, and it's one of the funniest lines in the film. Exeter says, "What, you want to give Neutron? Do the mind control the Neutron too? I know you want to run it on me." It's a nice line where you really start to see Exeter is different than the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's some that are kind of good lines. This is one where Meacham is talking with Wilson, Russell Johnson. Interocitor incorporating planetary generator. Interocitor with Volturator, with astroscope. Wilson says, here's something my wife could use at the house. An interocitor incorporating an electron sorter.
There are some, yeah. Which, of course, the wife would be doing, would be using the interocitor.
That's right.
To sort and clean the house. But one thing that I think, there's just so many, and it's funny, these books all come from McFarlane. This one, Women Scientists and 50 Science Fiction, she points out that, and it's something once you know what you're looking for, Bonnie Noonan points out that in this film, probably as much as any other or even more so in some of this, the women scientists in this film really stand out.
Yeah.
Not only is Faith Demure a true scientist, in fact, she's positioned so much of a scientist that when it was a line you just mentioned, when Exeter says to her, he says, as a woman, um, wouldn't your curiosity should be really aroused, something like that. And
Yeah.
by this point of the movie, we're 30 minutes in the movie when Exeter has this line. We are taking Faith Demure so seriously that it really is like, what are you talking about, Exeter? As a woman, as a scientist, she would be, her curiosity should be piqued to the max in this place. But that's simply to say the kind of that line is kind of an outlier because they show her as a scientist, and I think there's another scientist we're not sure. We think maybe her mind is already under the thought control that the Metalunans have used.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's another woman scientist among the group at Exeter's Island, or not island, but in Georgia.
Now you co-authored a book on how women were used in 50s science fiction, did you not?
Actually, we did. I used Bonnie Noonan's book as a source, especially Rocket Ship
Right.
XM.
We're not
Our
going
book
we're not
was
going
about
to
Mars
we're not
films.
going to dox you here, but
Yeah,
I just wanted to
no,
point out that you have written stuff on this, co-written stuff on this as well.
Thanks, Professor B. Yeah, but the focus for us was Mars films, but there were a lot of women scientists in Mars films, so her book was a terrific source following
Yeah.
the thread of the women scientists. But that was really neat in this film. And did we see any women on Metaluna? Come to think of it,
There was one on the ship. She
interesting.
was the one that was
That's right.
operating the atmosphere compensating tubes.
That's right. That's exactly right. So Metaluna. Maybe we're a little more progressive than Metaluna, which figures. The
Yeah.
Metaluna could use some.
But it's interesting that they used even one in that case. I mean, they
Right.
seem to be specifically wanting to have a woman in the Earth Scientist and a woman in the Metalunans.
That's a good point. A comparison there, and she was just part of the crew. That's
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, that's a very good point. One thing that kind of it was when they get in the ship, we see Brack on the ship. They wear even the Metalunans wear some sort of headgear where,
Yeah.
and I should have looked at that more. It feels like you can see their brains a little bit more. It was a strange, kind of a strange, kind of plastic stuff. It could have just been their protective suits.
I think that's what it was. It was just a
Mainly was
symbol,
that, yeah.
it was a space helmet, and they didn't want to have to hide all that makeup work they had to do on the people to cover it up.
Yeah, and now that I was thinking about civilizations too. Now that we're kind of this far in, and that's one thing Bonnie Noonan had pointed about how these different types of narratives, that the different types of narrative. I'm kind of she points out that take me a second just to find it. She points out that she points out the women in these films. So many of the women in the films are required. They're that a good point. It points out that some of the women, they don't do things that they're expected to do, in terms that they don't scream a lot, which is really neat. Ruth Adams does a little bit when she sees the mutant, but then again, who wouldn't? And she points out that travel into space plots can be read as metaphors for travel into a new society. Generally, at the conclusion of these plots, the hero or heroine returns to Earth changed but alive, either more appreciative of the humanity, like in this island Earth, or more understanding of its other life forms. She points out that kind of narrative. One thing that was kind of interesting too is it feels like, in terms of aliens and the what are the kinds of civilizations were presented. You think about this island Earth, the day the Earth stood still. Uh, it came from outer space, and one thing that's interesting is in all of these films, none of these aliens Well, you'd say the most dangerous are from this film, This Island Earth,
Yeah, well,
but
and
none of
it's
the
only kind of suggested that they are. They
yeah,
don't say that they're there to invade Earth. They're saying that
right,
they'll find a remote area to live, and they make some mention that they're superior because they have
right.
all these weapons and things like this, and that could be interpreted as we'll make sure that people leave us alone, or we'll take over and make this place a better place. But they don't seem to be malevolent in any way,
Right.
and while they have some mind control, it doesn't look like any of it's irreversible.
That's a
So
good point. That's a
so
good
it's hard to tell whether these are benevolent aliens or not. It may be kind of like they were in It Came from Outer Space. They're not really all that concerned with the human race as such.
and another
Although
thing
the change was not in our scientists, which were pretty much the same when they got off at the end of the film as they were at the beginning, but rather the Metalunans, or at least Exeter and the Monitor, seemed to soften their attitude toward humans.
that's a good point. That they changed some,
So,
and they're very individual, like It Came from Outer Space.
yeah.
Those that was a group, simply a group of aliens, each one with their own, they're under threat, and every just like humans, they would all react differently, and they do.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of alien we've got is It Came from Outer Space is very much a policeman, saying not It Came from Outer Space, the day the Earth stood still, day
Yeah.
the Earth stood still, saying you need to stop, you can't bring nuclear energy into the
A
universe.
policeman or perhaps an ambassador.
Yeah, yeah,
Could have been. Could have
could
been.
have been an ambassador. That
Now, interesting about this, and it changes the subject a little bit. They
yeah.
planned a sequel to this film. This was done in 1955. They were going to do a
No.
sequel. They already had Frank Cohen write a script, and the producer, William Allen, called Aliens in the Skies. And
Huh.
and it was announced as in a pre-production agreement, but eventually the studio boss looked over the budget and said, "Now this is too expensive," and so they decided not to do it. It leads me to believe that probably this film did not make enough money to justify how much it cost to make.
That's a good point. I just wonder if it did. It's when you hear of big box office, maybe it broke even, maybe it did a little bit, but yeah, yeah, maybe it was more than broke even, but not enough to justify a big sequel. And I wonder what that sequel would. That's
They
fascinating.
were going
What
to
would
use
be
Rex Reason and Faith Demir in this film, so it would be interesting. Aliens in the Skies. So perhaps the Metalunans came back and decided maybe that they needed to move there as well. I mean,
that's
they kind of left that up in the air at this.
maybe they had another outbase that survived and didn't turn into a sun to
Possibly, yeah,
warm other worlds. That's
yeah, but
you
warming
know
other
the
planets.
yeah yeah exactly. but but yeah, that would have been interesting. The attacking aliens were very similar. It's very similar to a Star Trek name, if my memory serves. It's like Zygons, and it just reminded me, and which are kind of interesting. They use meteors. That's their weapon. They propel meteors into the surface. They've got missiles, like
Yeah,
guided missiles, but the missiles peel off at the last minute and send asteroids basically into, destroying the surface of Metaluna.
yeah,
And the ionosphere has protected Metaluna for a long time because the asteroids uh, would burn up in the atmosphere. But once they lose their ionosphere, it starts. They've since moved underground, but basically their planetary protection system
yeah.
is falling apart. And there was and that's basically bringing the end to their society. But that would have that's an interesting follow up. That would have been an interesting follow up to the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see how. I bet it wouldn't. I think this film would be, for all its flaws, this film would still be better than a sequel. I think the sequel would
Maybe
not
so.
have
Most
improved it.
sequels aren't better. I mean, it's very
Yeah,
very few times when the sequel is better than the original film, and we've seen evidence of that, but probably wouldn't have done here.
And
Interesting little thing, little piece of trivia here too is as they're making their escape to get into the four-seater plane that the flying saucer picked up, they couldn't get the door open. And it added, of course, to the tension of the scene, but it wasn't intended. Actually, that plane had a sticky door, and they did 4 takes on it trying to get the door open and couldn't do it on any of the takes. And so they decided just to take the least objectionable one and just let it go because it would have
it raises
it would have
the
put them into
tension.
overtime if they had reshot that
Yeah,
again.
absolutely, it increased the tension. That was a nice mistake. There was,
Yeah,
one
sometimes they
thing.
work.
Yeah, just prior to that, some of the best lines, are when Exeter really becomes. It's after he talks about what happened to Metaluna. Then their ship, Exeter ship, goes back in orbit around Earth, and Ruth says, "What are you going to do? Your home planet's destroyed." And he says, "Our universe is bad. Our universe is bad." And you could say it's a little bit hammy too, maybe more, but it still works. Exeter says, "Our universe is vast, full of wonders. I'll explore, perhaps find another Metaluna. You see, I'm more adventurous than you imagined me." And then I love the way Rex Reason gives one of his best lines: "Exeter, you're a liar. I know you've used up all your energy bringing us here, rescuing us. You've used up all your energy." And then Ruth says, "And we can heal. Come back. We can heal your wounds." And that was a nice line because she means physical wounds and she means spiritual wounds. We can heal you. And then he says, "I'm afraid my wounds can never be healed." And now we know his death is inevitable. And of course, he takes his ship down at that point. But it's just a nice little exchange at the end. It's unexpected stuff. It's right after they're right. These all lines all occur right after. Well, there's 3 tubes and 3 of us.
Yeah.
And then you go into some poetry. It makes it a fun film.
Yeah, this was supposed to be on a double bill. It was, in fact, in 1957 in August. They showed this film on a double bill with Invaders from Mars from 1953. So
Invaders.
this was the A picture. Invaders from Mars was the B picture.
Wow, that's a great B picture, though.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
Invaders from Mars. Speaking of some poetry and just incredible special effects, that's a good double bill.
yeah.
Wow. There's a connection. I can't remember it
Universal
right
did
now.
some pretty good stuff. They kept a lot of their props and used them across different films. And one of the things was they have a piece of equipment in the lab which was used in the Frankenstein movie, which Universal did as well back in the 30s.
In the piece
You know,
from yeah,
yeah,
that
the swirly thing. Yeah,
that's because he's working on electronics, so
yeah,
mixing electronics. Yeah, very much Tony Stark. Get
yeah.
it?
Had
the
certainly the attitude. I'll give you that.
I've heard the car was used. The car on Metaluna, that because they have an underground tunnel tube. When they had reestablished underground, they got a tube
Right.
system, and I've heard, and then they get in the car, and I've heard that was used in another film too.
No
Uh,
doubt. They did have to go back and film a lot of the Metaluna scenes. The studio didn't like what the first director did, and that's the reason they have the 2 directors on here. The first one, let's see, I have to remember, or at least find his name up here.
Newman, was it
Joseph
Newman?
Newman. Joseph Newman did
Right.
most of this picture. They hired Jack Arnold to reshoot all of the Metaluna scenes.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, and so and here's one. I don't know if you can see one scene that is just beautiful, and there's mat work, model work, all meshing together.
Yeah,
Yeah, compositing some terrific stuff, but also just darn big models. And the tracking shot when the ship comes over the surface of Metaluna, and there's smoke. The ship looks good. The surface is destroyed. Instead of being a static shot, we're tracking along with the ship as it flies over Metaluna, and then it goes under the surface. That stuff is astonishing. I did see here, if you can see it, this is from the Universal Terrors book. This is a photo of, you can see the special effects supervisor holding the ship. So you can kind of see how big that model is. That is not the Attack of the 55th
For those of you who are
special
just
effects
listening,
supervisor.
that it's about the size of a large hat.
Yeah, that exactly. But you can see how big the surface was. It was
Yeah,
100 feet
yeah.
long. Yeah, like 20 by 100
Oh yeah,
feet.
well, yeah, where he's standing is yeah,
Right.
like a
And that
rock
is
quarry.
that 50-foot that special photographer, the Attack of the 50-foot David S. Horsley special effects supervisor.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how
The
God,
Universal
wait,
did pretty good special effects. I think the only one that would better them is RKO. RKO probably had the best special effects of the 40s and 50s.
right.
And one of the worst, oddly, was a big studio, Warner Brothers. If you remember in Casablanca where the plane lands, it just goes pump and that's it. They don't even roll.
That's yeah, yeah. That, I've heard people. I think I've heard this. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the rear projection, which actually becomes just mystical. It becomes
Yeah,
like just like rear projection. It turns into a memory, and that was meant to be
fantasy sequences.
a
Yeah,
fantasy sequence. But I've heard that the plane also is kind of making it, I guess, a little make Brigadoon like. You have the special effects that are because, but no, I think it's just bad special effects for the plane. I'm with you on that.
you could almost see the hand that brought it
Yeah.
down and then just went, and that was it.
It makes me wonder. There, a, a film that Howard Hawks did. Ooh, it's what is it? Only Angels Have Wings. But it's
Yeah, Wings of Angels.
Wings of Angels. Yeah, it's with it basically it's about a an air flying service.
Right.
And Cary Grant is running an air flying service, but the planes look just about like the Casablanca planes. Maybe they're more uneven, but there's places where they're better and places where they're worse.
Yeah.
But definitely some of those landing sequences.
Well, yeah, because
And I don't know if
Casablanca
those
was done during the war.
true.
They could not do very good sets on that. In fact, most of the planes, the close-ups on the planes were cutouts. There'd be a
Interesting.
piece of flat plywood painted like a plane, and they stood next to it, and they had a platform where they could climb out of it, but there were no real planes in the
Right.
show at all. Even though they had some of the I think the Van
They
Nuys
were cut
Airport
out.
was actually used for the landing field.
But they were cut out. That's because they really couldn't get a hold. Yeah, it's funny that film kind of. It's such a beautiful film. We cover it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
we of course
But
reviewed it. Yeah,
oh, but you kind of it's I don't know. You kind of in that film. Yeah, planes being it doesn't feel it's made during the war. It's of the war, but somehow it doesn't feel like it's made during the war. But it completely, yeah, they were looking at those limitations completely, and it reflects World War II. But it's just got a different. It comes at you. It doesn't feel like a lot of World War II films. I'll put it that way.
yeah,
And I may be going out on a limb saying that. Sometimes you just
yeah. We do this from time to time, don't we? Well,
exactly we do.
let's talk about what we're doing next week. We're going to go more down to
Pull
earth. In
back from
fact,
the edge of the limbs and
from the edge of the galaxy, we're going
it's a World War
underwater.
II film, but just
We're going
not.
underwater. This is a
Yeah.
Cold War film with
Oh yes.
The Hunt for Red October. This is what we're going to do next week with Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin and others. This is we've done the war movies and things like that. This is not a war movie. This is a Cold War era where a renegade Russian commander, a very highly regarded Russian submarine commander, has decided to defect and bring the newest submarine called the Red October
Oh
to the U.S. And it's a big Alec Baldwin plays a CIA analyst who suddenly becomes action hero unwittingly, and so it's an interesting movie, and you can watch it just for what Sean Connery does in it,
The
where he
only
plays a
actor
Russian
that
with a Scottish accent.
the only character who's had more actors associated here, we're looking at Jack Ryan, but
Yeah,
the only actor that's had, or I'll ask you, give me an actor that's no, a character
who's
that
had more people playing him.
exactly.
Yeah,
You know what you got a name that comes to mind?
Spider-Man.
Oh, well put. Felix Leiter from James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond
Comes
too. That's another that they've
and Bond too, but Felix Leiter, the
yeah.
CIA sidekick. Good God, he's been played by everybody. But okay, what got me into searching and probably got me over the tip of my ski boots was the film Only Angels Have Wings. We were talking about special the flying scenes,
Yeah.
and that is a Casablanca. Yeah, you said is Warner Brothers, of course, but Angels Have Wings is a who did that? Because I was thinking of the effects in the Columbia Pictures, so I don't know how their effects were, but that's and Russell Johnson was not in Only Angels Have Wings.
No.
I'm just going to say
Right.
that it's definitive. And we can leave it at that. I know.
Yeah, I think maybe we should.
Well put.
So, anyway, why not join us? Why not join us next week when we'll do the Hunt for Red October, and we'll also think once again of a favorite TV program that
Right.
is not so well known. So we'll work on that. We were because of the holiday this week, we were falling behind on coming up with a definitive idea on what to talk about. The closest I could come to was cartoons, and I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
that's really that was basically theatrical cartoons that were made into TV show, and that's a whole different thing. We'll go with something that was actually written for TV. So that will be next week, along with Hunt for Red October,
The bonus feature.
the bonus feature. So that's coming back. We haven't forgotten it yet.
The bonus feature that's free. You don't have to pay extra to get the
That's
bonus.
it. That's it. We do not charge a penny extra for the extra value that we give you in these videos and podcasts. So, tell me, how many Gilligans do you want to give this Island Earth?
I'm gonna give it three. Three out of 5.
Oh, 3. I'll give it 2.5. Mostly for the special effects, the sound, and the model work that they did on it. I thought that was pretty good. I really like the design of the Interocitor. I don't think anybody's ever done anything quite
No.
as good as that. So
And
that's
that's a great idea. Actually, that idea I think maybe somebody did that beforehand, but that sure has been copied.
it has been copied. Weird Al Yankovic was the last one in a music video he did. He had his own version of an Interocitor for some
Of
reason.
or even the idea that you have to create something that hey, this catalog shows up, or like a video game that you play, and if you're good at the video game, we'll come and get you, like the last
The
Starfighter.
Last Starfighter. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's a bad enough movie for us to do, isn't it? We'll think about that too. Until
We
next.
will.
Thank you, Professor O, and thank you for joining us. Until next time, don't go far.